The autumn wind swept across the small English countryside station as William stood nervously adjusting his worn coat at 35. The blacksmith had spent 2 lonely years since his wife's passing, trying to raise his 8-year-old daughter, Lucy, on his own. The arrangement seemed impossible now. A mail-order bride from London, someone willing to start fresh in their quiet village of Millbrook. William's hands shook slightly as he checked his pocket watch for the 3rd time. The afternoon train was due any moment, and with it would come a woman he had never met. They had exchanged only letters through a matrimonial agency. Her words had been kind and thoughtful, speaking of a desire for a simple life and a willingness to care for a child who needed a mother's love. The villagers had whispered about his decision. Some called it foolish, others desperate. Mrs. Patterson from the bakery had shaken her head and said no good could come from marrying a stranger, but William knew he needed help. Lucy had grown quiet and withdrawn since her mother's death. She needed more than he could give her alone. When the afternoon train pulled in with a great huff of steam, William watched passengers step onto the platform. A merchant with heavy bags stepped down first, followed by an elderly couple arguing about their tickets. Then he saw her, a young woman with kind eyes and auburn hair, clutching only a single letter. She wore a simple blue dress that had seen better days and carried no trunk, no bags, nothing else. The woman looked round the platform with uncertain eyes. She was prettier than William had expected, but there was something fragile about her, like a bird that had lost its nest. Her dress was clean, outworn thin in places. Her shoes had been mended more than once, but her posture was straight, and her chin was raised with quiet dignity. "Are you William?" she asked softly, her voice carrying a gentle London accent. "Yes, miss, and you must be Catherine." She nodded, looking down at her empty hands, her cheeks flushed pink with embarrassment. "I'm terribly sorry, Mr. William. There was a fire in my boarding house last week. I lost everything except this letter and the clothes I'm wearing. I understand if you've changed your mind about our arrangement." William studied her face, tired but determined, ashamed but not defeated. Her eyes held pain, but also hope. He could see she had been crying recently, but she stood before him with courage that impressed him. Something stirred in his heart. This was not what he had expected, but perhaps it was exactly what he needed to see. The station master walked past, giving them curious looks. Other passengers hurried by, eager to reach their destinations, but William and Catherine stood still in the swirling autumn wind. Two strangers trying to decide their future together. "Miss Catherine," William said slowly, "anyone brave enough to keep a promise after losing everything is exactly the kind of person our little family needs." Catherine's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled through them. Relief washed over her face like sunshine breaking through clouds. She had been so afraid he would turn her away, send her back to London with nothing and no one. "Are you certain?" she whispered. "I have no dowry, no possessions to bring to your home. I cannot even cook very well." William almost smiled at that. His own cooking had been terrible since his wife died. Lucy had been living on burnt porridge and overcooked vegetables for 2 years. "We can learn together," he said kindly. Just then, Lucy peeked out from behind her father's legs, curious about this mysterious woman who had come with nothing but hope. The child had been hiding, watching everything with wide eyes. She was small for her age, with dark hair like her father and serious brown eyes that seemed too old for a young face. Catherine noticed the little girl immediately. She knelt down, so she could look at Lucy at a level. "Hello," she said gently. "You must be Lucy. Your father has told me so much about you in his letters." Lucy said nothing, but she did not run away. She studied Catherine's face carefully, the way children do when they are trying to decide if someone is safe. I lost my favorite doll in the fire, Catherine said quietly to Lucy. Her name was Rosie, and she had yellow hair just like yours. I miss her very much. Something in Lucy's expression softened. She understood loss. She knew what it felt like to lose something precious and never get it back. William watched this first meeting between his daughter and the woman who might become her new mother. Catherine had not tried to win Lucy over with false cheer or empty promises. Instead, she had shared her own sadness. It was honest and real, and somehow that seemed right. The train whistle blew again as the engine prepared to leave. Other passengers were climbing aboard for the next part of their journey. But William, Catherine, and Lucy remained on the platform. Three people who had found each other in the most unexpected way. "Shall we go home?" William asked, offering Catherine his arm. She took it gratefully, and together they walked toward the village, with Lucy following close behind. None of them knew what the future would bring, but they were willing to face it together. Catherine's first weeks in Millbrook tested every ounce of her determination. The small cottage felt fun, with its creaking floors and unfamiliar shadows. Every corner held memories of William's first wife, and Lucy watched her every move with suspicious 8-year-old eyes. But Catherine had learned something from losing everything. She knew how to start over. The cottage was simple but clean. 2 bedrooms upstairs, a kitchen and sitting room below. William had cleared out a dresser for her few belongings, though she had almost nothing to put in it. Her single dress hung lonely in the wardrobe next to his work clothes. The mirror showed her tired face each morning, reminding her how far she was from the life she had once known in London. Lucy was the greatest challenge. The little girl had loved her mother deeply, and she was not ready to let anyone take that place. She would sit at the kitchen table doing her lessons, stealing glances at Catherine when she thought no one was looking. When Catherine tried to help with her reading, Lucy would shake her head and say she could do it herself. But Catherine had learned patience from her losses. She began with small gestures. When Lucy came home from school with torn stockings, Catherine mended them with such care that they looked better than new. She used tiny, even stitches, and found a way to make the repair almost invisible. Lucy said nothing, but Catherine noticed she wore those stockings more often than her others. When William returned from the forge each evening, his hands blackened with soot and his shoulders heavy with exhaustion, Catherine had warmed to eating and gentle conversation that eased his day. She would ask about his work, about the horses he shod and the tools he mended. Slowly, he began to share more than just the facts of his day. He told her about his dreams of expanding the business, about his worries for Lucy's future. The village women whispered about the bride who arrived with no dowry, no possessions. Catherine could feel their eyes on her when she walked to the market. She heard their hushed conversations stop when she approached. Mrs. Henderson from the general store made pointed comments about proper preparation for marriage and how a woman should bring something to a union besides empty hands. Catherine felt the sting of their words, but she held her head high. She had learned that her worth was not measured in trunks and trinkets. She had survived the fire that took everything she owned. She had found the courage to travel to a strange place and marry a man she had never met. She knew who she was, even if others could not see it yet. The real test came on a cold October evening when Lucy fell ill with fever. The child had seemed tired after school, picking at her dinner and complaining of a headache. By bedtime, her forehead was burning hot, and she was shivering despite the warm blankets. William paced the kitchen, worried and helpless. "Should I fetch the doctor from the next village?" he asked. But the doctor was expensive, and it would take hours to bring him in the dark. Catherine looked at the frightened child and made her choice. She pulled a chair next to Lucy's bed and settled in for the night. She bathed Lucy's forehead with cool cloths and gave her sips of water when she could manage them. But most importantly, she began to tell stories. She told tales of brave princesses who faced dragons not with swords, but with kindness. She spoke of magical gardens where flowers could heal any sickness, and of wise queens who knew that the strongest magic was love. Her voice was soft and steady through the long hours of the night, her cool hand never leaving the child's burning forehead. Lucy drifted in and out of feverish sleep. But even in her dreams, she could hear Catherine's gentle voice telling her she was safe, she was loved, she was going to be well again. When the fever made her afraid, Catherine sang old lullabies her own mother had sung long ago in London. William checked on them old times during the night. Each time, he found Catherine still there, still telling stories, still holding vigil over his precious daughter. He saw the exhaustion in Catherine's eyes, but also the unwavering dedication. This woman who barely knew Lucy was caring for her as if she were her own child. When dawn broke through the small window, Lucy's fever finally broke. She opened her eyes. Clear and bright for the first time in hours, Catherine was still there, now holding Lucy's small hand in both of hers, ready with a smile and a cool drink of water. "Are you feeling better, sweetheart?" Catherine asked softly. Lucy nodded, studying Catherine's tired face. This woman had stayed with her all night, had chased away the scary dreams with stories and songs. Lucy had felt safe in a way she had not felt since her mother died. "Will you tell me another story tonight?" "Mother Catherine," Lucy whispered. The words hit William like lightning. He had been watching from the doorway, and he felt his heart crack open in the most beautiful way. Lucy had not called anyone mother since her own mother's death 2 years ago. But here was this woman who had nothing, giving them everything that mattered. Catherine's eyes filled with happy tears as she smoothed Lucy's hair. "I will tell you as many stories as you want to hear," she promised. When the harsh winter of 1923 arrived early, Millbrook faced its greatest challenge in years. Snow began falling in November and did not stop for weeks. The roads became impossible to travel, cutting off the village from the outside world. The coal shipments were delayed, food supplies ran low, and influenza spread through the village like wildfire. Catherine watched from her kitchen window as neighbors struggled to heat their homes. Smoke barely rose from many chimneys because families were saving their last pieces of coal. Children walked to school wrapped in every blanket they owned. The general store shelves grew emptier each day, and Mrs. Henderson looked worried for the first time since Catherine had known her. Many families struggled, but none more than the Thompsons next door. Elderly Mr. Thompson had fallen ill with the influenza that was sweeping through Millbrook. He lay in bed with a terrible cough and high fever. His pregnant wife Margaret could barely manage to care for him while growing heavy with their first child. Catherine could hear Margaret crying through the thin walls between their cottages. One morning, Catherine found Margaret collapsed in her garden, trying to dig through the frozen ground for forgotten potatoes. The pregnant woman was weak from hunger and exhaustion. Catherine helped her inside and made her sit by the fire. "I don't know what to do," Margaret sobbed. "Henry is so sick, and I have nothing left to feed him. The baby is coming soon, and I'm so frightened." Catherine looked at her own meager supplies. William's work at the forge had slowed because people had no money to pay for repairs. Their own cupboards were nearly empty. But she could not watch her neighbors suffer alone. Despite having so little herself, Catherine became the heart of the community's response. She went from house to house, talking to the village women. She organized them to share resources, asking each family to contribute what they could spare. Some had a bit of flour, others had preserved vegetables, and a few had medicine for the sick. Catherine turned her cottage into a makeshift clinic. She moved furniture to make room for the sickest villagers. With no formal medical training, she relied on her grandmother's remedies and an abundance of compassion. She remembered her grandmother's voice teaching her to make healing teas from herbs and how to care for people with fever. William worried as he watched their food disappear. One evening, he looked at their nearly empty shelves and said, "Catherine, we can't feed everyone. What will happen to Lucy if we give away everything we have?" Catherine took his rough hands in hers. "We can't feed everyone fully," she corrected, gently, "but we can make sure no one starves completely. Sometimes a small kindness multiplied by many hands becomes a miracle." She proved her words with actions. Catherine taught the village children to make soup from vegetable scraps that would normally be thrown away. She showed them how to use potato peels and carrot tops to make broth that was surprisingly nourishing. The children turned it into a game, competing to see who could make the most creative soup from leftovers. She showed the women how to stretch flour with creativity, by adding water and letting dough rise longer. They could make bread that fed more people. She taught them to make porridge from oats last longer by adding grated apples and dried berries. Every scrap of food became precious and useful. When families were too exhausted to care for their sick relatives, Catherine sat with them. She would arrive at their doors with hot soup and clean cloths. She would stay through the night, cooling fevers and holding hands. She sang lullabies to sick children and read to elderly people who were too weak to hold books themselves. The hardest test came when Margaret Thompson went into labor during the worst storm of the winter. The doctor could not travel through the deep snow, and Margaret was terrified. Catherine had never delivered a baby before, but she stayed with Margaret through the long, difficult night. She boiled water and gathered clean cloths. She held Margaret's hand and encouraged her with every contraction. When the baby finally arrived, Catherine was the first to hold the tiny, perfect child. Baby Thompson was born healthy despite the difficult winter, crying strongly in Catherine's arms. The whole village celebrated when they heard the news. People came through the snow to see the baby and to thank Catherine. They called her the guardian angel who had seen them through their darkest time. Mrs. Henderson from the general store even admitted that Catherine had done more for Millbrook than anyone with a dozen trunks full of possessions could have done. Lucy, now proudly calling Catherine Mama, watched her stepmother with growing admiration. She saw how tired Catherine was from caring for everyone, but also how happy she seemed to help others. One evening, as Catherine tucked her into bed, Lucy asked Mama, "Why do you help everyone when we don't have much ourselves?" Catherine smiled, smoothing Lucy's hair with gentle fingers. The question showed how much the little girl had been thinking about everything she had seen. "Because, my darling, when you have love in your heart, you're never truly poor. The more love we give away, the more we have. That's the magic of kindness." Lucy nodded seriously, understanding in the way that children sometimes do outside. The wind howled and snow continued to fall, but inside their cottage, warmth filled every corner. Spring brought renewal to Millbrook, and with it, Catherine's true transformation of the cottage into a home. The harsh winter had ended, leaving behind a village that felt closer and stronger than ever before as the snow melted and the first green shoots pushed through the dark earth. Catherine felt her own life blooming in ways she had never imagined possible. She planted a garden using seeds donated by grateful neighbors. Mrs. Patterson from the bakery brought her tomato seeds saved from the summer before. The Thompson family, now blessed with healthy baby Henry, shared their precious flower seeds. Even Mrs. Henderson from the general store, who had once criticized Catherine's rival without possessions, quietly left packets of herb seeds on Catherine's doorstep with a note that simply said thank you. Catherine worked in the garden every morning before the sun grew too hot. Her hands, once soft from her London life, became strong and capable. She learned which plants grew well together and how to protect tender seedlings from late frost. Lucy helped her, learning the names of vegetables and flowers as they planted them side by side. Inside the cottage, Catherine painted cheerful yellow curtains from fabric scraps that the village women had saved for her. She had become skilled at making beautiful things from almost nothing. The curtains brightened every room, making the small cottage feel warm and welcoming. She arranged wild flowers in old jam jars and filled every corner with laughter and love. The cottage that had once felt far now felt like the heart of a world. Each room held memories of the life she was building with William and Lucy. The kitchen where she had learned to cook William's favorite meals, the sitting room where she and Lucy read stories together every evening, the bedroom where she and William talked quietly about their hopes and dreams for the future. The village that once whispered about her now sang her praises. Catherine had become the person everyone turned to for advice, comfort, and hope. When young Mary from the mill wanted to marry Tom the carpenter, she came to Catherine for help planning her wedding. Catherine helped her make a beautiful dress from simple white cotton and showed her how to arrange flowers from the meadow. When new mothers in the village struggled with crying babies or sleepless nights, they knocked on Catherine's door seeking wisdom. She would arrive with soup for the family and gentle advice for the worried parents. Her calm presence seemed to soothe both babies and mothers alike. Even grown men came to Catherine when disputes rose over property lines or business disagreements. She would listen to both sides with patience and help them find solutions that left everyone feeling heard and respected. Her wisdom seemed to come from having faced real hardship and learned what truly mattered in life. William watched his wife bloom like a garden, amazed at how someone who had lost everything had somehow gained the whole world. The woman who had stepped off the train with nothing but a letter had become the most beloved person in Millbrook. Their love, which had begun as a practical arrangement between strangers, had grown into something beautiful and unshakable. He would watch her in the evenings as she mended clothes or helped Lucy with her lessons, and wonder how he had lived without a gentle presence. She had not only given him a wife and Lucy a mother, but she had taught them both how to see the abundance that surrounded them every day. One sunny afternoon in late spring, Catherine was hanging laundry on the line behind their cottage while humming a cheerful tune. The sheets flapped in the warm breeze, and she could hear Lucy's laughter as the child played with the Thompson baby in the garden. It was one of those perfect moments when life felt complete and beautiful. Suddenly, a fancy carriage pulled up to their cottage, its polished black paint and brass fittings gleaming in the sunlight. Such elegant vehicles were rarely seen in Millbrook, and Catherine stopped her work to stare. Out stepped a well-dressed man in expensive clothes that marked him as someone from London society. He looked round the simple village with obvious disdain before his eyes settled on Catherine. His face broke into a smile of recognition and relief. "Catherine," he called out, hurrying toward her. "Thank goodness I've found you at last." Catherine stared at him in shock. She had not seen this face in over a year, but she would never forget it. "James," she whispered, "what are you doing here?" He was her older brother, the one who had barely noticed when she struggled to survive in London after their parents died. He had been too busy with his own life to help her when she needed him most. "Catherine, I've been searching for you since the fire," James said, taking her hands in his. "I heard about the boarding house, and when I couldn't find you anywhere in London, I feared the worst. Uncle Edmund passed away 3 months ago, and his lawyer has been trying to locate you. He left you his fortune in his will. You're a wealthy woman now. Catherine, you can come home to London and live in proper society again. Catherine felt the world spinning round her. Uncle Edmund had been a distant relative she barely remembered. The idea of sudden wealth seemed impossible after so many months of careful budgeting and making do with so little. She looked at her simple cottage with its cheerful yellow curtains. She saw Lucy playing in the garden they had planted together. Dirt on her dress and flowers in her hair. William was approaching from the forge, his hands stained with honest work and his face showing way at the sight of the fancy carriage. She thought of Mrs. Thompson's healthy baby, whom she had helped bring into the world. She remembered the faces of all the people she had helped through the difficult winter. This community had become her family in ways that money could never buy. "James," she said softly, her voice steady and sure. "I am home, and I've never been wealthier in my life." 10 years had passed since Catherine stepped off that train with nothing but hope. Now, the cottage buzzed with the laughter of Lucy, now 18 and engaged to the doctor's son, and her 2 younger siblings, little William and baby Rose. The simple cottage had grown over the years, with an added room for the growing family and a larger kitchen where Catherine could prepare meals for the many visitors who always seemed to find their way to her table. Catherine had become the unofficial mayor of Millbrook, though no one had ever voted for her or given her a title. She organized harvest festivals that brought the whole village together, settling disputes with the same gentle wisdom that had helped them through the terrible winter years ago. Most importantly, she welcomed newcomers with the same open heart that had once needed welcoming herself. The woman who had arrived with no possessions now presided over a home filled with love, a garden bursting with life, and a community that flourished under her care. Her rose garden had become famous throughout the countryside. People traveled from neighboring villages just to see the beautiful flowers that bloomed from spring until the first frost. Catherine always sent visitors home with cuttings, saying that beauty should be shared, not hoarded. Her children had grown up watching her kindness and learning from her example. Lucy had become a young woman of grace and compassion, helping Catherine care for her sick neighbors and teaching the village children to read. Little William, now 8 years old, had his father's strong hands and his mother's gentle heart. Baby Rose, barely walking but already showing signs of her mother's determination, followed Catherine everywhere she went. The village had prospered over the decade. William's forge had expanded, and he now employed 2 assistants. The general store had grown larger, and Mrs. Henderson had become one of Catherine's dearest friends. New families had moved to Millbrook, drawn by stories of the kind community and the woman who seemed to make everything better just by being there. On a crisp autumn morning, Catherine was tending her roses when she heard the familiar whistle of the afternoon train. The sound always made her think of that day 10 years ago, when she had arrived with nothing but a worn dress and a heart full of fear. Now, the same whistle brought back memories of hope and new beginnings. Something made her walk to the station, perhaps the same instinct that had helped her recognize need in others throughout the years. The platform was mostly empty except for the usual passengers, Mr. Davies returning from his weekly trip to the county seat, and Mrs. Mills with packages from her sister in the city. Then she saw her, a young woman stepping onto the platform, alone and frightened, carrying only a small bundle wrapped in brown paper. The girl looked round with the same lost expression Catherine remembered seeing in her own reflection in shop windows during her first days in Millbrook. The young woman's dress was clean but patched in several places. Her shoes were worn thin, and her hair needed washing. But her shoulders were straight, and her eyes held the same determination Catherine had once relied upon to carry her through her darkest days. "Excuse me," the girl said hesitantly, approaching Catherine with careful steps. "I'm looking for work. I don't have much experience, but I'm willing to learn. I lost my family in Manchester, and I've nowhere else to go." Catherine felt her heart skip a beat. The words were different, But the situation was exactly the same. Here was another young woman who had lost everything, standing on the same platform where Catherine's new life had begun. It felt like a gift from God, a chance to give someone else the opportunity she had been given. Catherine smiled, remembering another young woman who had once stood on this very platform with nothing but determination. The circle was completing itself in the most beautiful way. "What's your name?" "Dear Emma." "Ma'am." "Emma Clark." "Well, Emma, I'm Catherine." She studied the girl's face, seeing her own younger self in the worried eyes and brave chin. "And I think you've come to exactly the right place." She took the girl's arm gently, the same way William had offered his arm to her so many years ago, in Millbrook. "We believe that the best things in life aren't the ones you bring with you. They're the ones you build together." As they walked toward the cottage, Catherine thought about the letter she had been writing to her children. She had been trying to capture the wisdom she had learned over the years, wanting to leave them something more valuable than money or possessions. She wrote about how losing everything had taught her what truly mattered, how love multiplied when shared, and how sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the chance to start over. Lucy ran out to greet them, her face lighting up with the same welcoming spirit her stepmother had shown her years ago. She had grown into a beautiful young woman, but she still had the kind heart that had first warmed to Catherine during that long night of fever and stories. Baby Rose toddled behind Lucy, her chubby legs carrying her as fast as they could. She was fearless and curious, already showing signs that she would grow up to be as strong as the women who had raised her. William emerged from his forge with a smile that could warm the coldest heart. His hair was touched with grey now, and his hands were permanently stained from years of honest work. But his eyes still held the same kindness that had convinced Catherine to trust him with her future. Emma looked round at this family that seemed to glow with contentment, at the cottage that radiated peace, at the garden where hope bloomed in every corner. She had expected to find work, perhaps a place to sleep and a small wage. Instead, she had found something she had not dared to dream of: a home. "Welcome home, Emma," Catherine said simply, and meant every word. The end.